Hello, my name is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana. I'm a high school science teacher, basketball coach, and board game enthusiast. The content I create for this channel revolves around my board gaming hobby. Today I'm taking one of my new games off the shelf, Forgotten Waters. It's a game of piratey misadventure in a world of magic. I'm going to give you an overview about how you play the game, and then share my opinions of this story-driven adventure. All right, I've got Forgotten Waters set up on the table here, and in this game you have quite a few pieces and parts, but once you understand how each of them works, it's not a particularly complicated game. There's just a lot of little details to get to know the first time through, but it really didn't take my wife and I very long to feel comfortable with the game. First, let me talk to you a little bit about the components and how they work, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about a two-player game. I won't go through all of the details of the variant and how it's different from the main game, and I don't want to spoil anything about the game, so I'll be careful to not do that. But I want you to get at least a feel for how the game plays, kind of an overview. So let me talk about the components first. You can see that this box up here has quite a few cards and tokens. And I believe this box actually only comes if you did the pre-order. I don't think it'll be in the retail version. I'm not 100% certain of that. But as you look at this box, you can see there's a place for treasure cards. There's reroll tokens, misfortune tokens. Rerolls let you reroll your dice if you need to, and misfortune tokens mean you have to roll 2 dice and take the lower of the 2. These are constellation tokens. At different times during the game, you sort of level up your character and you get to collect these constellation tokens, which enable you eventually to gain new skills and abilities. And then there's these story cards, which also mesh with the story being played out, both by the story in the book and just what happens on the board. So those are key components that help drive this game. Over here you can see the gauges and trackers for the game. We'll start at the top. They're not connected, they're separate little pieces, so you can move them around and assign them to different characters. I've just put them together here so you can see them all in one shot. The boatswain, or the hull tracker, allows you to move this little ship up and down the tracker to determine how the quality of the hull of your ship is holding up in your adventures. And it says here at the bottom, if the hull marker reaches 0, then you lose the game. So you do have to make sure you're repairing the hull if it's damaged during your adventure. The Cooper is the supplies track. And so you're managing your supplies, which will slide up and down as you find new things and use the supplies as well. The first mate tracker has 2 pieces. There's the discontent tracker, these crossed swords. And if your crew becomes discontented, that rises. And then as your crew number rises or falls, as crew members potentially die, or you gain new crew members, if you gain them, you move them up. If they die, you move them down. And if these two ever cross, if they ever meet, then you automatically lose. So you're trying to avoid that. You may notice too here on the crew member counter, there's a little hole in the mouth, and that hole uncovers a number underneath to tell you how much food you need to provide nutrients for your crew. Then we've got the quartermaster, and this is how you track your infamy. And we're playing 2 players, so I have 2 player character tokens. There's a different character token for every standee, every player in the game. And you're sliding these tokens up and down the track as your players gain infamy or lose infamy. There's also the lookout track, or the threat tracker, and then these are the threat tokens. If you increase your threat as the adventure takes place, you would place these threat tokens on, and then there's different portions in the game where it says to gauge your threat level. And if it's too high, then you're going to suffer some sort of damage. So you want to try to keep that threat level at a manageable position on the board. On this same board, there's also the objective cards. And so this one, our first objective is to reach Precipice Island, which is right here on tile number 963. Then we've got the gunner tracker, and there are potential for 5 different cannons, and you can spin these dials to use the cannon's effects. And the cannons are operated by these little tiles down here. I can show you a close-up of what those look like. So On these cannon tiles, you have one side that says loaded, and then you have another side that says unloaded. And so during the game, you can buy new cannons, and you can load and unload them. Well, unloading them is when you fire, but loading them, you can do that during the game as well. And there are other tiles for future cannons you could find or purchase throughout the game. And as you use them in battle, you fire them to give you an advantage in your aim. And then you track usually the strength of the opponent, or in some cases the strength of your crew with these dials. And you have to keep some dials high and some dials low, and usually you're trying to get most of the dials turned to 0 to be successful in those battles. This main portion of the game right here is the actual game board map. And you can see we've got our ship standee. So I'll give you a close-up of that. The standee is a nice little image of the ship. And it starts off on this part of the board, which is just an island. So we're in the harbor of that island maybe. And we're going to be traveling around this map. Whenever we travel, we uncover these navigation tokens. And so as you turn them over, if you're moving one space, you would turn one over and move on to that space. If you're moving 2 spaces, you move 2 spaces. And you use the numbers on the tiles whenever you're directed to by the book to read what's happening as you move. Sometimes there's nothing to read. The only ones that you read automatically is if they have an exclamation on the tiles, and neither of the ones that I turned over have an exclamation, so we wouldn't automatically read the number. And actually the exclamation just means you stop, but typically in the story that means you're going to end up reading what happens with that number. But you don't just read the numbers as you move. The book and the app will tell you when you're supposed to read them. But different things happen as you progress and explore the island. And again, we're trying to get here to the Precipice Island in our first adventure. Sometimes throughout the game, you'll have different events pop up where new islands appear or new ships appear. And so these special strategy tokens or adventure tokens, some have ships, some have islands, some have sea monsters and tortoises and such. And you pull those out as the story and the app tell you to, and place them on the board where you're directed to do so. There's also these lock tokens, which I'll explain in a bit when I show you how the book works. And then there's the standees. There are 7 that come with the game. In a 2-player game, each player operates 3 standees, so you have a total of 6. You only use one tracker for infamy, so you just choose which of the 3 you're going to use. So my wife chose the yellow character for her primary person, and I chose the green character for my primary person. But then we each have 2 other standees, and then these dice match our characters. So I have the green person, but I also chose the orange and the blue as my other 2 standees. My wife has the yellow, but she chose the red and the purple as her other 2 standees. And you start the game with 2 treasure cards. And so on each treasure card, there's some directions that tell you what your treasure involves. So I'll just show you one as an example. So this one says cache of supplies, discard to gain supplies +3. And so as you gain treasures throughout the game, you can use them at various portions of the game, various points in the game to advance the story or to help you in a battle or to help you in an adventure. So you start off with 1 treasure each. And then this is just a little character card that reminds you if you ever gain treasure past your max, and you can see the max is 4. Well, you probably can't see on that, but it says the max is 4. Then you're going to discard down to your max. And for each treasure you discard, you would gain a supply. So that's one way you can also increase your supplies as you play throughout the game. So those are the main components of the game. When you first start the game, you also need to set up the ship scribe and player sheets. So let me show you those. The ship scribe paper, one person will be in charge of putting the ship's name and then keywords in the scenarios down here, tracking the threat events if your threat reaches a certain level. If you go into the captain's quarters as part of the story, you check those off and read the entries, and if you take a captain's mission. And then if you save the game, this helps you figure out how to save the game, what the traits were for every character, and what the map looked like if you're saving it. So that's the ship's log. And then each character has their own player sheet. And you track your constellation events here on this little map, and you gain different skills as those fill up. You also track your exploration, brawn, hunting, aim, swagger, and navigation skill levels down here. And if you're playing in a more than 2-player game, every time you get a little star here, you get to fill in a spot on the constellation. If you're playing in a 2-player game, you only get to fill in the stars on the constellation when your infamy tracker cycles over. I can explain that here in just a second. This is also part of your player sheet. It tells you what ending you experience if you survive. If you have enough constellation events to gain enough skill, you might have a legendary ending, or a good ending, or potentially even a bad ending even though you survived. On the other side of this is where you gain the skills based on this constellation events. And this is sort of a Mad Lib sort of story blank background that you create for your pirate. So you fill in some words, and then you use those words Mad Lib style in the backstory, and even in these constellation events, and in the endings as well. So there's a fun little Mad Lib element to it. So I was talking to you about the 2-player constellations and how you earn the stars. As you're gaining infamy, you're moving up the track. This says highest and this says lowest. Once you reach the top, you cycle back to the bottom, and every time you cycle over, that's when you would put a star on those constellations if you're playing in the 2-player game. There's a couple other variations and details to the 2-player variant that you'd need to become familiar with, but that's the basic change in terms of those constellation star points. So this is the app that works with Forgotten Waters, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that, not giving away any spoilers, but just to help you see how it works. So there's the typical options setting where you can change the sound volumes and change the different effects and language and such, pretty standard. Then there's a place where you can print extra player sheets and ship logs built right into the app. There's also some directions on the variant. So if you want to try to play a solo mode, or if you would like the 2-player mode instructions, then there's also some further instructions on saving your game at any time as opposed to just at the set times. As you play through, there are points in the game where it automatically gives you sort of a good saving point. It's kind of a midway through each adventure from our experience, the 2 that we've completed. And then the typical information about Crossroads games and Plaid Hat games. But here's how the app actually integrates into the gameplay. So at the very beginning, you choose the scenario, and they recommend you do Beyond the Ocean's Edge, which we've completed. We've also completed The Witch's Heart, but there's also Nature's Splendor, Dead or Alive, and Spoils of the Damned. And you can see up here in the corner that all of them except for the last one, Spoils of the Damned, do have voiceover already. You can see they're tagged in the corner with that feature. We'll just do the beginning one to give you a taste of how it works, but again, we'll avoid any spoilers. So once you've clicked into the adventure you would like to start, as you go through the book, which I'll show you in the walkthrough, you'll put in different numbers here and click YAR to go to the progression of the story in the digital app. At certain times, it asks you to run a timer, and the timer, you just click here, and it counts down from 40 seconds. And this is when you're placing your standees on the different assignments within the book for each different challenge that you're facing. Once it gets down to the end of the 40 seconds, it has this little bell sound so that you know your time is up. And when you're beginning this game, you can see as I hit startup, it says, is this your first time playing Beyond the Ocean's Edge? I'll just show you yes. If it is your first time, then it gives you the setup. If it's not, it asks you if you've saved it, and then it takes you to where you saved it, assuming you saved it at one of those midpoint areas. So here it's showing you need these navigation tokens and these special tokens, and then on the map you're going to place them in this position so you can just follow along. And then the ship setup tells you how many supplies you have, what the discontent is for your crew, how many crew members you have, and what the hull strength of your ship is, and also what kinds of cannons you have and whether they're loaded or unloaded, and some other special instructions to get started. Once you have all the games set up, you can hit continue, and it says have each player read the backstory section of their player sheets aloud, filling any blanks as they read with the corresponding word from the story blanks section of their sheet. So this is that sort of fill your own words in Mad Lib sort of story that you create. Once you've done that, you hit continue, and then it has the script of the story, the beginning intro to the story, and you can read it yourself or you can listen to it. I'll just play a few seconds.
Long ago, people spoke of a land called Sunset, a place full of honorable merfolk, powerful witches, towering monsters, and legendary pirates.
So that gives you an idea of the sound of it, and then at the bottom it says turn to page 19 on that one, in the book, which I'll be showing you here in just a minute. So that's how the app works. It is necessary for the game, but it doesn't drive the game in a sense that you have to feel like you're always on the app. It's more of the storytelling feature of the game and then telling you which portions of the book to go to. So it is integral, it is important, it is necessary, but I didn't find it to be overwhelming, at least not for our tastes. Let's go back to the game now and talk more about how the game itself plays. The next big part of the game is the book itself, the location book. So let's take a look at the location book. You can see the art is fabulous. And inside the book, we're going to just turn open to page 19 because that's the first one for the first adventure. So if you start with the first adventure, this is where you're going to open up to. You can see a beautiful picture of the port. Sometimes there will be directions down here at the bottom, and this one there are not. You should always read those directions first before you start looking at the other side. By other side, I mean the other side of this page. And on this page that goes with that port picture, you have various actions that you can take. And then each of these actions is explained in detail here. And with 2 players, as I said, you use 6 standees. And so maybe my wife would choose, I'm going to use the market, and then another character, the psychic shanty, and the captain's mission, and the tipsy tortoise. And then this player decides that they're going to work the ship. And this player says, you know what, I'm going to work the ship as well. And you may notice some of these are blue and some are green. On other pages, some of these are red. If they're blue, only one character can take that action. If they're green, as many characters as wish can take the action. And if they are red, then you must take that action. One player must take that action. As you complete the action, you would remove the standee and read the directions. Generally speaking, you're going to roll the dice, and following what the dice results are, you might gain swagger, you might gain crew members, you might gain supplies, you might gain infamy, or brawn, or exploration skill, or you might lose things. So you're going to follow the directions down through. I won't spoil any of that. And each player in turn works their way down the page, completing their actions, and then once all the actions are complete, you get to the bottom and it says round end, read entry 808 on this page. You would read that entry, which is typed into the app, that number 808. I showed you earlier how you would type that in and click the YAR button. And then it will read, if it's a storyline, it will read to you, or it will tell you what steps you should take next. So that is a quick overview of the basic gameplay without spoiling any of the storyline, but just giving you a little bit of an idea of how you can use these different components, or how you will use these different components to live through and hopefully survive your adventure. So now for my opinion on the game. We've played 2 full adventures, 3 full adventure gameplays, because the first time we made it through the first half, and in the second half we perished. We tried it again the second time, and we were able to be successful the second time. And we've, in both cases, divided the adventure up, where we did the first half of the adventure, and each adventure takes about an hour or an hour and a half to get through half of it. And then there's a fixed save point where you can easily save it. And we did that both times. We took a pause there and came back the next day and did the next half. And we were able to survive that first adventure the second time through. And then we tried the next adventure, and we were able to survive that one the first time through. So we've actually had quite a few hours of playing Forgotten Waters, and we are by no means tired of the game at all. We really do enjoy this game. We're both really fans of story-driven games. We like Seventh Continent, which is very story-driven. We like the Ryan Laukat games like Above and Below and Near and Far, and the stories that guide you through those games. And this is even more immersive with the app and the voiceovers telling you the story and the voices of pirates. The writing is very funny as well. We often laugh out loud at some of the clever little quips, a lot of puns integrated in. We find it very entertaining. The gameplay is fun. We enjoy the mechanisms here of maintaining all of these different discontent levels, crew levels, supply levels, protecting the hull of your ship and repairing it, loading and firing the cannons and battling creatures and battling other pirate ships. It's just a fun adventure. And there's enough of a gameplay, while it's not by any means a Euro type of a game where you're really min-maxing a lot of things. There's enough of that management that we really enjoy it, but a lot of adventure and a lot of story, which really keeps us engaged. I'm sure we'll keep this one for quite some time. Because of the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders, we've only been able to play this 2 players so far, but we are excited to eventually have some friends over and introduce them to this game and be able to play this game with them. I think a lot of people that enjoy story-driven games would really like this one. So I would rate this one an 8.5 out of 10. It's one of the top games in our collection for right now, as our collection continues to grow, but we really do love this game, Forgotten Waters by Plaid Hat Games. I hope you've enjoyed this overview and brief review. If you have, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to get notifications when my future videos are posted, please click on that bell. As always, thank you for watching. This is Billy Indiana, signing off.